Okay, guys, I'm just gonna try and do a quicker review of the Worksharp precision adjust here. I had this thing for a while. I'm just gonna run through its pluses, its minuses, and give a little hack on putting lapping film on here. We'll start off with the pluses. The main thing I like about it is its clamping system. It's removable, so you can pull it out and check on the knife as you progress through the grits. A lot of systems don't allow you to do that. You can just drop your knife in here, and you want to try and roughly find the center of your blade, and then you just tighten it down with this thumb screw here. That's really handy, that thumb wheel or finger wheel, whatever you want to call it. The wheel anyway, to adjust the tension here on the clamp. It leaves a really nice finish, as you can see there, for just two stones and a ceramic stone. It's a really nice finish. But anyway, now one nice thing about this clamp is it goes into this V shape here on the sides, on both sides. So when you put the blade in, the tang of the blade, or not the tang, but wow, I just can't think of words right now anyway. But the heel of the blade, I don't know. I'm getting too tired for this right now. But yeah, anyway, the back half of your knife here rests in the clamp. So every time you put your blade in here, you get a nice, accurate positioning. It goes in the same position every time because of the thickness of the blade. It just goes into the same position. It's a really nice design. So as long as you put it centered on the blade every time you put it on, it's going to be in the exact same position when you go to sharpen it next time. You don't have to start all over again. That's one really nice thing about this system compared to others like the Lansky. It would pretty much be this thing's main competitor. The Lansky used to cover the space that this covers now, in my opinion. Now, the Lansky, it doesn't have any guide like that. So when you put it in, it doesn't go in the same position every time. So you have to try and kind of fiddle around and get it in the right place. And the clamps don't pinch down from both sides. So when you get a full flat ground blade, it just doesn't grab it right. It kicks it off to the left or it kicks it off to the right, and you got to fight with it and try and get it straight. I spent a while with a Lansky, and I'm glad I moved on. Now this just centers everything nicely, especially with a blade with a flat section here. You don't have to worry about much. And then it has a nice flat edge like this one. Now, if you got something like this spider coat, you can't put it in so both sections, oops. Oh, sorry, I was shaking you guys there. You can't put it in so both sections are touching. Because if you do, you end up with something like that. See how the tip's so far away from the heel here? You don't want to sharpen like that. You want to sharpen with them closer to being level to each other. Even that's not quite right. You want it pretty close to each other. It doesn't have to be perfect. That's actually not half bad. See, now, you want to make sure enough of the clamp is grabbing the blade at the same time, right? Oh, I went the wrong way. Tighten it down here. But you want to make sure enough of the blade is grabbed by the clamp that it's still semi-secure. Because if you try and tighten this too much and say not all the clamp is supported by the blade near the tip here, you could bend this little aluminum clamp, I'm sure. I haven't done it yet, but I'm sure it's possible. Now, see if you get too far out, it just won't work. So you need to kind of compromise. Anyway, you kind of want it like that. You just don't want it completely in because it would be on too far of an angle is all I'm trying to say. I don't want to spend too much time on this because I'm sure you can figure it out. Now this one actually has a really nice finish on it. This one's strapped quite nicely. That's my Vinev Stones. I think that's how you pronounce it anyway. For my 1x6, the Hapstone. But yeah, this leaves a nice finish, nonetheless. So the clamp is really nice, like I'm saying, and you can take it out and you can inspect the edge as you go. Another thing I really want to mention, I'm trying to go as quick as I can here, is the clamp is lined with rubber on both sides here, so it helps grip for one, and it also helps with not scratching your blade. Now, one thing I did just notice is if you tighten down too much, this happens. This just happened to me. I've never had that happen before. Until I just clamped down really tight on a blade there. So be careful with that. Apparently, the system can come loose like that. Because I was just trying to show you that it would probably be possible to bend that clamp if you tighten it too much. And I was tightening it pretty good, so be careful with that. Now, it still works fine, obviously. But, because there is little little pins in here that it sits in. So once you tighten it down, it'll sit in there again. I'm not too worried about that. Now, like I said, these clamps are lined. You got these little guides here. Those are the guides I was talking about. They aren't lined, so they can't scratch things, but it should just be the... I don't know what's wrong with me right now. I can't think of the name of that part of the blade. If I have time to edit this, which I probably won't, I'll post it up. But I literally just filmed a longer version of this and said that multiple times. But it's one of those days. I can't believe that happened, though. I'm still in shock of that coming apart like that. But yeah, you got the heel here. You just put it in there and you tighten it down. It's not going to scratch that too much because that should be the only part it's touching. Now, sometimes... I'll talk about this in the negative more, but the knife can wiggle around and it could scratch it, but it would have to come loose, which the knife doesn't. Usually it just goes a little left or right in the clamp. Now, I'm going to have to fix that because that's going to annoy me, but I won't do it right now because I'm in the middle of something. We'll just tighten her down, deal with it later. But yeah, now another thing, I'll just pause this for a second. Okay, so we're going to try and stick with pluses here. Another plus is the rotation system. You got this little button back here. Try and bring it in focus here. This is a button right here. You push on that, and you can spin the knife from the side to side real easily. It takes a little getting used to be able to push it right, but as you can see, it doesn't take much. It is fairly hard to push the button, but once you get used to trying to find a quick way to grip it, it's not so bad. One thing you want to do is you want to make sure that white dot is facing up and the handle is facing towards the right, so you can flip it easily without having to have it hang off the table so you can get the handle over the other edge. Now, if that happens, all you really got to do is, see, you would be like this then. And then you would try and flip it and it would hit the table. So if that happens, you just pull it out, flip it over and start again. You don't have to start over. You can keep sharpening. You can still carry on sharpening. It's just, I wouldn't carry on with having to flip it under the table. I would just flip it and then sharpen it. And then next time I would just push the button. So there's that. The button's nice. It flips really nice. It goes in exactly how you had it the first time. The stone holder here is nice. You got these little rubber bump stops so you don't accidentally fall off the blade when you're sharpening it, and you don't go up and over and scratch the surface of your blade. Now, it is magnetic, so you can take it off and just spin the stones that way, so you don't have to worry about bumping your hands on the blade as you're sharpening it. That's kind of a nice feature. You don't have to worry about having your hands in front of this. These angles right here, on here, I'm just going to try and bring it in so you guys can see here. I'm kind of working in a limited light area here in my back room at the moment where it's quieter. The angles here go from 30, 25, 20, and 15. And then over here on this side, you have the single degree increments. And then after you go 5 again, it would be single degree increments and then single degree increments. Now, those are extremely accurate. I haven't had any issues with those at all. They're always bang on. I checked them with an angle cube to see whether everything was okay, and it was. I just set my angle cube right here, just off to the side because this knob here gets in the way sometimes. And then I set my angle cube on the guide rod. Was it on the stone with the stone on? And yeah, it was bang on every time. Now, I'm sure if you had a larger knife and you were maxing out this stone and you're, say, sharpening something way down over here like this, I'm sure the angle is going to change because they designed it for smaller knives. Now, that said, you can sharpen something up to 10 inches in this thing. I've sharpened a 10-inch, 8 or 10 inch, I think it was 8-inch chef's knife. I think that's what mine is. I'll have to check. But I'm pretty sure it's a 8-inch chef's knife, mine, and I was right on the edge of this. Like, I was hardly able to sharpen it, but I could, and it's just like right near the tip, I was on the edge of the stroke. I had this completely maxed out to be able to reach the ends. So just keep that in mind if you're trying to sharpen something really long or something like that. Now, you could do it. You could just crack this loose and just, say, slide it onto the next section and then tighten it back down again. And you're still going to be at the same depth and everything, so you can still keep carrying on. And it'll hold the angle. It's just you'll have to deal with flipping it and then sharpening that one section and then loosening it off. And, you do all your grits, so you're done on this section, and then you slide it ahead, and then you start all over again. And then you just keep carrying on until you hit the end of the blade. But that's kind of a pain in the butt when you got something like the half stone over here where you can just do it all at once. But a half stone is a bit more of an investment than this thing. So that's also something to consider. But there are budget versions of Hapstone, like the K1 and the Hapstone, was it R2 Lite? It has smaller clamps, they're cheaper, and so on and so forth. So that's also something to consider. Granted, it's like about twice the price of this, and maybe a touch more than that. And then there's the Hapstone M3, which is about 130. So I have the Hapstone V8, but the table systems have a bit of an advantage over this. Like, this has a few advantages because you can look at stuff and inspect the blade as you go. So I'm not going to mention those too much more because I'm just going to end up talking too long. Now, I've mentioned all of this. Like, the stones are really good. They leave a really nice finish. You've seen that. The 600 is okay. The 320 is not quite low enough of a grit, but if they went lower, you would need the 320 in between, say, like a 120 or a 100 or an 80 grit. So to get rid of the extra scratch marks, to give that nice finish it leaves. So I understand why they went with the progression they did. It just would be nice to have one extra stone on there, but then that would have complicated this piece, which is why I'm assuming they left it like this, so you could make it modular and put in another cassette, say, at one point in time once they release it. There are some available for lapping films. There's a guy that 3D prints them. You can get them on eBay. You just Google it and it'll pop up. That said, all you got to do is take some glue stick, put it on here, and then cut a piece of lapping film to this size. Some scissors, or one of those paper cutters they used to have at school. One of those deals with the big blade down the side that you just chop. I have a little version of that. I use that to cut all my lapping films. It's like $20 at Walmart. But anyway, that's Canadian. But yeah, and then you just slap it on here with some glue stick. And it works great. And then you just take some soapy water after you peel it off, and then you just rub it off with a cloth. comes nice and clean, you can use the stone again next time. And say in between you want to use another piece of lapping film that's not quite sticky enough, you just put a little bit more glue stick on there. It's fine. So that's a little hint for you, save you some money. So yeah, and other than that, it's a solid unit. The only other thing, my real only complaint is I'm gonna say two real complaints. The real complaint I have is this. This happens. Now, like I can do this just with just using my nail on my pinky finger, just touching this knife, I can do that. And what happens is when you're sharpening, that happens. So just keep in mind, if you are going to get the system, you have to kind of keep a little, your thumb up here or something so it can't walk out, because it will walk out. And another thing that can happen with this, especially on a Spyderco or something that you have to grab funny, is it can twist in the clamp and move and stuff like that. And as you saw earlier when I was trying to clamp down on that Spyderco on a funny angle, the end of the clamp here came unglued. I was looking at it and it's an easy fix. When I paused it, let's put 2 dabs of glue on it and it'll be fine. Now, that would also be kind of a negative because it's plastic. The whole reason it walks out is they have it keyed for the groove and the rotation piece here. And if they didn't do that, it would be a real pain in the butt to try and, see, this is already came loose from me wiggling it stuff. Like I was saying, if they didn't do that, it would be harder to line this up and put it in. Is the whole reason that they made this keyed like this and nice and narrow in the end, which also kind of makes it rock, sadly. But it would be far too hard to get in if they just kept the thing same thickness. You'd be jabbing at it, trying to get it in there, and people just get frustrated. I'm sure that's why they did that, because I'm sure they tried making it nice and steady, and that was the issue. So, and it's honestly kind of nice to be able to hold it with your hand anyway, because it is such a small unit that you want to do that. Like, granted, it's got a little bit of grip because of the rubber feet on the bottom here, but yeah. So my only real negatives is the clamp. It slops around a little bit, but like I said, as long as you put your thumb on there, it's not a big deal. And the clamp can kind of come, I'm not going to say come loose, but the knife can move around in it sometimes. So you want, like I said, you want to put a Sharpie marker around here, or put some tape on your blade and put a Sharpie marker on the tape. So if the knife moves a little bit, that you'll see that Sharpie mark move. You'll see that the Sharpie mark has a gap or something, and then you can fix it before it really becomes a problem and you accidentally reprofile all that work you just did. So that's pretty much it. Like, share, subscribe, that stuff. Now, I'm just going to try and quickly cover a few more things. If you're thinking about this, let's say over a Lansky, or you already have a Lansky and you're like, do I really need this? Just stop and think for a second. Every time you get a new knife with a Lansky, you have to reprofile the damn knife because there's only 4 notches in it. And that takes forever with a Lansky. With this, if you're going to reprofile, it's going to take a little bit of time because you only got the 3220 get diamond stone, but it's still a diamond stone, so it's not that bad. I've reprofiled stuff with this, and yeah, it took longer than it would with something like my Hapstone, but I still did it. It wasn't the end of the world, and yeah, like I was saying, it's time consuming, but it's nice and calm and peaceful, and you can just get it done. It's not a big deal. It doesn't take that long. It's not like sharpening with a Lansky. A Lansky honestly takes a long time, and with a Lansky, you only have 4 selections here for your angle, and then on top of that, like, your angle's like slopping around like this the whole time, up and down, up and down, up and down. Like, if you look at this, that a little bit of room that Lansky has in there, that's like almost 5 degrees, at least 2.5 anyway, 3 degrees. of slop. So, uh, and this you can micro adjust with it. You just turn it just a little bit as you're going along with the ceramic to try and find that nice Sharpie marker. That's one thing I really like about this. You can just slowly turn it, and then you'll find that sweet spot to get rid of that Sharpie marker. That's really nice about this. A lot of systems should come with this screw top. And the angle doesn't change or anything like that because of the screw top. It's nice and tight, and it stays where you set it. A lot of these style systems here, every once in a while they'll come loose. Not all the time. I'm not saying it's a frequent thing, but it does happen on occasion. But this, so far, when I've used it, has stayed where it's supposed to. With the Lansky, you gotta pick it up and flip it over. The Lansky, you can take it and look at the blade and see how it's doing. But the Lansky, I've been just sharpening stuff, and stuff is falling out because it wasn't clamped properly, and that was kind of my fault, obviously. But at the same time, it's with the Lansky, you would have to work so hard to get a full flat grind to clamp properly, to get like that nice symmetrical edge, and even then you couldn't put the knife in the same way every time like you can with this. So it's just something to keep in mind. In all honesty, if you're looking at a Lansky, don't even think about it. Just grab this one. It'll save you a lot of hassles. The Lansky was a great system when it came out. It was game changing. But now that we have something like this, it's hard to pass this up for a Lansky. So just keep that in mind. If you already have a Lansky, keep using it until the stones burn out or something. Or if you're watching this thinking about getting this, in all honesty, it's going to save you such less hassle, especially when you're getting a new knife. Like I was saying, like with the Lansky, if you get a new knife and one of those presets isn't what the system was already designed for in one of those certain angles, you have to resharpen the whole thing. I got bit by a mosquito there. But yeah, just keep that in mind anyway. I'm just trying to see if there's anything I missed in my notes here. I don't think so. The only other real thing I wanted to mention, I think, was the fact that, Canadian, this thing costs a lot of money. It's like $80 plus tax. So you're looking at $90 and some change is what I paid for it personally. So you have to keep that in mind. It's not the cheapest thing around. And you can probably get a Lansky cheaper. Especially in Canada, you can get one of the cheaper whetstone Lanskys much cheaper, or oilstone Lanskys much cheaper. So that's something you have to keep in mind. Now, and you can get like what are they called? Some of the Chinese knockoff stuff, like the Ruxin and stuff like that. I'm not sure if I pronounced that right, and you know what? They do an okay job, but when you factor in the fact that if you get decent stones for that and everything else, you're going to spend the same amount of money as this. And this comes with a couple of good stones. It's going to have an upgrade path. For instance, Hapstone, the company that made that system, right here. I'll just let you guys see this so you can get a comparison here real quick. I'm verging on half an hour here, but just look at the size difference here. This thing, you can pull this out, you can take this out, and you can put it in a drawer. It doesn't take up much room. It's easily put away if you're in an apartment or something and you don't have room for something like this. And like I was saying, they're making an adapter so you can put some quality stones on this thing. They're making an adapter that changes it so you can put KME size stone on here. You can put a 1x6 stone on there. I haven't heard anything about it in a few months, but they were talking about its release a while ago. So maybe there's some issues with being able to release it or something. I don't know, but hopefully that comes out, and then that'll be a complete game changer for this thing. Honestly, it would be quite competitive then, because you'd have such a wide stone selection. Like, you'd be able to put some Vinev diamond stones on this thing and get some really beautiful edges. 1x6 blanks, and you wouldn't have to fiddle with other stuff. You just pop it on and off, and away you go. It's a total game changer for the system. And like, the only real thing you'd have to worry about is this clamping system, and it's not that bad. Mine's a little loose, like I said, because I over tightened it and broke that little bit of glue it had bonding it there. But a little dab of super glue and that's fixed. I'm not too concerned about that. I don't really feel that's a downside. It would be nice to see this all metal. Maybe that can be something they work on, but I doubt it. Especially for the money you pay Canadians. It'd be nice to see a little bit more heft to it. That's just my opinion, but from what I've seen, Worksharp has a good customer service base. So I'm just going to note one last thing for you guys. If you can, buy it in store, say Cabela's or something like that in the States, that you can just walk in and buy it, because I've seen them get shipped, and the start of the guide that the clamp goes in gets broken off because it gets shipped up like this. It gets shipped down flat like this in the packaging, and the postal service will bang it around, and one of these will get snapped off. Now, it doesn't happen every time. I've seen people get it just fine, but it saves you the hassle of trying to return it, or just write Worksharp and say, can you send me a replacement unit? And they usually do. From what I've seen, they've sent people replacements. And it might just be that you unscrew this piece and put a new cap on it. I don't know. Nobody ever really followed up with it to say what Worksharp did. But yeah, if you're thinking about a sharpener for small knives, this is great because it's sharpened by Ladybug. My Ladybug's just a tiny little knife. At 19 degrees is what I was able to get on it. So keep that in mind. You can sharpen very small knives if you're looking for something that does that. And I think I mentioned earlier that I was able to get my 8-inch chef's knife, I think it was, 8-inch, in here, and sharp would be done. So other than that, yeah, it's a solid machine. I highly recommend it. Like I said, if you already have something, or you're thinking about something else in this price range, honestly, I've tried a lot of them, and I wouldn't consider anything other than this. Especially considering this has the possibility at one point to be able to accept the 1x4 stones or the 1x6 stones. Now, it isn't going to be adjustable. It's either going to be 1x4 or 1x6. At least that's the way it was. The pre-production model was. So keep that in mind. At least this thing looking like it's going to have an upgrade path, and it's going to be quite a substantial one. Now, some of those other things can already accept this, but they're nowhere near as accurate as this thing. Like, when you flip this thing, there's a 0 degree change. I don't think I've mentioned that yet, but when you flip the knife, it doesn't change the angle at all, because this is molded plastic. There's no real way for it to change the angle. There's no machining or anywhere for mistakes to be made. The only way that this could change angle is if you didn't clamp the blade in right. And with the way they have the system set up, it's pretty hard to improperly clamp the blade. I checked it with multiple different styles of knife. Like, I sharpened this knife. I sharpened like 10 or 15 knives. I don't know, more than that. I got it down here somewhere. But at least 10 or 15 knives. I'm going to say probably closer to 20 on this before I did my review on it, because I wanted to make sure I knew every little thing about it. And apparently I didn't know that you can break the glue here. but you think there was a screw in here. Anyway, actually they did, because it's that centerpiece. But yeah, that's why it's falling apart. A little tired, guys. But yeah, like I was saying, the most important thing is it centers all different types of blades. Full flat grounds perfectly grabs them. Ones with a flat piece on it perfectly grabs them. Benchmades perfectly grabs them. And it's very easy to use. You just pinch it down and then tighten it up. You just put your blade in, pinch it, tighten it, and it'll self-center. So that's one thing you have to keep in mind. It's easy to get good results from this thing, as long as you go through and you get a burr before you move on, especially on that first stone. Make sure you get a burr. Pull it out. Feel all the way. You'd have to feel this side, like the underside of your blade, but feel all the way down and make sure you got your burr all the way down the edge, and then flip it over and then start again. Now, one thing to keep in mind is, say I'm on this side and I take my 320 and I go all the way down, and I get my burr all the way down. One problem with that is, if it took me, say, 15 passes to get that burr, it isn't going to take me 15 passes on this side, because I've already hit the apex from this side. So you got to keep in mind that if you did 15 passes here, you should do it here to keep that bevel the same thickness, to keep the apex centered. That's kind of important. Now, everybody loses count, so don't stress over it. I do it all the time. But try and keep it roughly the same. So say you do 5 passes on this side to pull a bird, do 5 passes on the other. Or if you want to do 1 pass and then flip it. It's going to take you a while because you're going to be flipping back and forth quite a bit. But say you do 5 passes and you haven't pulled a bird yet. Try and remember to flip it over and do 5 passes. And then same goes on the other side. 5 passes. Flip it over, do another 5 passes. Or 10 passes if you think it's going to be a lot. If the knife's in really bad shape. It makes things simple. And then once you start getting that bird, okay, say you're at 10 passes. Do 5 passes. And then do 3 passes. And then do 1 pass. It helps keep that apex nice and centered. And then it slowly pulls your bird down. Because you don't want too big of a bird, because then you might not be getting it right as you go along. And say you did that with your 320, you're not going to need to spend too much time with your 600 then. It simplifies things. And then by the time you get to this ceramic stone, all you really need to do is stropping strokes. So usually what I'll do is, like, because this is a ceramic stone, I honestly will do a few passes because I'm trying to get rid of that 600 grit, and then you'll start stropping because there's too much of a gap. So you will have to work with it. But usually what I would do if I had the proper progression is I would just strop with higher stones. I wouldn't go all crazy with it. But with this one, you kind of do have to work it for a while to get rid of those scratch marks. Yeah, anyway, I don't want to keep talking about too much. I'll do a sharpening video on this shortly, because it's a pretty basic system, and I've kind of already ran through a lot of it right now. It's just I wanted to cover most of the bases for you, and if you stuck along and you already knew some of what I was talking about, I appreciate it. But anyway, have a good one, guys, and stay sharp.